Welcome into another episode of They've Got Now. I'm really excited to be joined today by one of the people I think I spend more time talking about basketball with than just about anybody. And that's no joke. That's Mike McGee, my guy. Mike, first and foremost, how are you doing?
Oh, doing good, doing great. It's a pleasure to finally, meet you via video, but also to be chatting some women's college hoops. Since yes, we do spend about 155% of our time, talking women's college basketball, WNBA. So, yeah, man, excited to chat with you and chat about some awesome players.
Likewise, man. I think yeah, we've been kind of had this in the works for a while. Just making it work. Scheduling has been annoying because I'm terrible at scheduling things sometimes. But we're here to talk about the start of the college season because I think there's a lot to dive into. I think the fun part is like you don't always know what's real right away. You just kind of get glimpses and you get to kind of envision stuff off that and wonder what it's going to look like when it matters more, or when you get a little bit deeper into the season. But I think the way we approached this was looking at it almost as like what is a breakout player? What does it mean for a player to break out? What does that look like? How do you kind of define that? And so we spent a very long time on a Google Doc, kind of breaking that down and defining
Yeah,
what that is. And I think our ultimate definition was a player who has never been first team all conference. I think we have some stipulations where a second team all conference player is included. But for the most part, this is like somebody who is like, okay, not necessarily fully in the ether. Somebody who, if you're like a diehard college basketball fan, yeah, you probably know about, but there's still tip of the iceberg in terms of getting that sort of recognition and are stepping into that frame. So we're going to start off by talking from the bottom up. So, talking about our honorable mentions are the players who I think would be at the top for most people. Our honorable mentions are going to be a lot of the players who are more of like, we know who they are. Um, some of them have been around. Some of them are players that are, coming onto the scene very hot right away because they're that level of talent. And then we're going to build our way up to looking at the players who we think are primed to make the biggest jump that we have seen thus far. Um, so yeah, I think we can start with looking at our honorable mentions. Or did you have anything you wanted to add about breakout players and what that means?
yeah. No, I think you nailed the priority definition of a breakout player. If I would add anything, it would be players, including the definition you stated, but also players that just are making that quote unquote leap, like a large leap in production and importance to their team. That would be like kind of a secondary level of like they are known names within their team's fan base, within their conference. If a lot of you know women's college hoops fans have a favorite team, but they also know that conference really well. But they haven't been a starter, or key players went to the W, or playing pro basketball, or just have graduated and now they have this role where you know um, a fan may have known them for 1, 2, 3 years, but now they have a big the most opportunity to make an impact. So, a few players that I've included on the list were are I think for those diehard fans, for those people that have been in tune with the game, they might know their name, seen them play, but I'm hoping this year that they become like more of that national name, once we get towards, next spring into the tournament. So that's what I would add on the kind of how we're categorizing these breakout players.
Absolutely. Well, let's start and just talk about some of these freshmen who have been pretty insane to start off.
Yes.
Um, I think there's a lot of ways we can go in terms of looking at that, but I want to start by talking about obviously Sarah Strong and Joyce Edwards, the number one and two players in the class. Um, do you want to talk about Sarah or Joyce first?
I'll go with Joyce. You if you want to
Yeah, let's talk with Joyce
start, and
first
I'll
because
I'll
she's
roll off of
she's
what you're
played
gonna
the
say.
more competitive schedule so far. Obviously, UConn's going to have a hell of a schedule coming up, but
Yeah.
um, I think part of what's been really fun with Joyce is like, and especially again, like when you are looking at a first year player, it's impact through the lens of like this is their first time playing meaningful basketball at this level. Like um, obviously the turnovers have been a thing, but I think that's kind of what stands out is like in spite of the turnovers, she has still been that level of phenomenal. It's like she's at 110% speed, and when she cuts down, that timing to like being herself on court, that's kind of mesmerizing to think about where she's at already. I mean, I just think about like I mean, NC State right now is kind of figuring out where they're at with the post by committee with River Baldwin gone, and then Caitlin Weimer, who is going to be one of their big fill-ins, has been hurt to start the year. Um, and Joyce Edwards just kind of made mincemeat of NC State's interior
Yeah.
yesterday during that game. Even if I don't even remember what her final stat line was, it wasn't anything crazy, but like I still think in general, like when you look at how much strain that put on NC State's defense, and just her ability overall to be a force on the interior. Um, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that you get really impressed by because it's not always easy to find those kinds of things. That's a reason why she's, you know, the second best player in the class, arguably the first. You know, obviously depends on
Yeah.
how things play out, but and it was her first start ever yesterday, playing against number 9 NC State. So
Yeah.
pretty big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously, like, you go back to was it last year when she was still before she made her final decision, and you have all this chatter about like where she's going to go. And even if you didn't know who Joyce Edwards was, you knew how important she could be, and why the top programs in the country wanted her. um, and it's interesting because I think we're in this time where we have big time. I mean, we always had incredible women's college basketball players, but just as social media becomes just larger and larger in this game, you have these high profile first year players coming in, and like with Juju Watkins, last year, and like her role, like she immediately came into USC and just became the entire universe of that program, and just her on the court, with the just the volume that she has, the time she has the ball in her hands. And so you see Joyce Edwards, and like she's another top, one, top two recruit. And some may think like, oh, she's going to do the same. She's going to be the same way on the court. Um, and so I lead with that because like you mentioned her stat line was not, this Juju esque 35 points on, 20 plus shots and all that. But just her impact across the court is what gets me, at the beginning. It's less about, like, yes, the turnovers, but also they've played, a surprise Michigan that I don't think many people thought Michigan was going to really factor in that game, and it was a 4-quarter, battle. And then a top 10 program in NC State, who they played in the, Final Four last year, and she had the surprise start. And yet, here she is in her second game, and she puts the ball on the floor too. She moves, which is really impressive. It's not just I'm just going to be in the post and wait for the ball. She's active, full court, and so that's what's exciting to me is that she's a different type of number one, number two recruit, and that's exciting for me as well. And so I would hope that people allow her, more than a week, to figure it out. The stats are gonna come, but just what she's shown already, it makes complete sense as to why South Carolina wanted to keep her in the state. Um, this South Carolina, front court is going to be different. I mean, we're used to Aaliyah Boston, we're used to Camila Cardoso, like we're used to these, more quote unquote traditional, air quotes for the podcast listeners, of what we expect, especially in the women's game. Like, simple. You need a great, big post to be successful. And Joyce is going to be different, and I'm excited about that difference in how Dawn and the coaching staff uses her talent. So yeah, I've been impressed with how Joyce has approached these first couple games, and excited to see just as their schedule continues. I mean, they next to UConn have probably the toughest non-conf schedule. And so yeah, really pumped to see how she continues to grow in her role, and get more comfortable as the season goes on.
Likewise, and I think part of the reason that I really wanna do this and I was excited that you wanted to too is because like like, I don't know, I framed it poorly with the stats at the beginning, but the points like you're saying, like, okay, it's not pitting anybody against each other, but it's just saying like impact and stats are not the same thing.
Yeah.
Like obviously stats can be incredibly meaningful and important, but also again, South Carolina plays very differently. They have different kinds of talent. It's a different way of playing compared to what
Yep.
USC does or what UConn does or what South Florida does. Like it's just different. And so, equating that is the fun part. Um, but moving from Joyce, because I think part of what Joyce and Sarah Strong have in common that's really fun, there are two players where like if they get the ball in the slot and can play one-on-one against a forward or find ways to attract help, that's where they're so deadly and
Yeah.
lethal. And that's why they're exciting as prospects because it's not easy to find players who come in right away that are so deadly doing that.
Yeah.
Um, and that's what's been really fun to see with Sarah Strong with UConn so far. I think just a very different look at the four spot than they've had in prior years. In terms of like a player who can really shoot it, she's taking four a game right now. She's going to command the respect of a defense where I think there were times last year where, as good as Aaliyah Edwards was, like there were times where it was like, okay, well, not that she was playing the four because they played downsized a ton, but like you think, okay, even the year prior when it's Aaliyah playing more at the four,
Yeah.
like okay, cool. Well, we can just work to kind of play against this offense in a different way, and you have to attack in the pocket like that, and we have different ways to defend it. But now it's like, okay, there's a real stretch threat here, but she also is an incredible passer, which I think has been really
Yeah.
fun to watch. Too, 3.5 assists per game. She just like I would have been exciting to see her go to South Carolina, but I wanted her to go to UConn because I watch her game and I'm like, that is the exact kind of player that is going to thrive at UConn. Like somebody who can really just trigger offense, play inside out like that, stretch the floor, and then attack on the inside. And that's what I even mentioned. Like her defense has been awesome to start. Like I think her hands have been really good. Obviously moves her feet very well, but also brings. I mean, she just has a ton of length, so she can do a lot as a shot blocker too. Um, I'm just excited to watch her keep growing with this team because, again, the poise, the composure, um, that kind of stuff as a freshman is just like not super common to see.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I haven't had a chance to see UConn uh, play a full game yet this year. I know they're
Shout
playing
out
North Carolina
SNY. Yeah.
this week, right? Are they playing North Carolina?
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
think they
that I
play
think
North
that
Carolina
should
this week.
will be a fun matchup. Also with fun first year players over North Carolina that we may get to in this conversation. But yeah, I agree with everything you said. Just kind of checking some of the highlights and stats, and also just seeing a lot of Sarah Strong play. Just USA basketball and different kind of high school kind of all star games. I just love it. It feels like she, and this is not the first time someone has said this about a quote unquote post player, but like she plays like a guard, or like I see her like she has the confidence of a guard. If I can, if that makes sense, but just the
Hmm.
way she shoots the ball, she shoots like she's 5'11", and everybody knows she's 45% from three. Like just the way that she just lets the ball fly. You wouldn't think that someone with her height and size would be that comfortable just shooting. And we're obviously the game is changing, at a macro level, so you're seeing that a lot. But I just love just her confidence and her skill set, and that's something that, especially at the college level, is still not common. Like we have increasingly talented players, but you kind of see people who are fighting their talent, or their mental, like they're more confident than the talent is there yet, and they need more time. Whereas
Hmm.
Sarah knows she's really good, and she can be consistent with that. So I'm just hopeful for UConn that they're still working through some injuries, right? And getting players healthy. I hope, obviously, for everybody we talk about and just college basketball in general, that no major injuries can happen. But for UConn, they've obviously just been hit so hard over the last really 3, 4, 5 years with injuries, and the more that they can be healthy, I'm excited to see her in the flexibility, the versatility that she offers, and not having to be put either in a position where she has to stay out on the floor all the time because they only have 6 players, or she's stuck in a role because they have no one else in that role. So yeah, hopeful that we can see the full kind of range as soon as possible, or keep it consistent as the season goes on.
Absolutely. I think a lot of great insight with that. Um, let's talk really quick about Kate Koval over at Notre Dame, who, speaking on injuries, like has stepped into a larger role than I think was anticipated right
Yeah,
away for Notre Dame, starting off the bat. Um, because I mean, I think what they had like 7 or 8 active players yesterday. Liza Carlin is out after getting injured against Mercyhurst.
mm.
Um, or wait, was she even before Mercyhurst? I can't remember off the. I think she got injured during their scrimmage. I can't
Yeah. She
remember off
didn't
the top
play
of my head.
against Purdue, so
Yeah, I know she didn't play against Purdue. Obviously, I mean, Maddie Westball is still out.
yeah,
There's a lot of injuries on this team currently, which is unfortunate. I hope this is just getting it out of the way early. But point being, in looking at Kate, I think part of what's been really fun is, um, again, a player who I think is, and I was out in South Bend about a month ago and got to see her in person. I think part of what's really fun in watching her play is like, you can tell she's not there yet in terms of like being acclimated to that level. I think she's obviously very talented, was a 5-star, incredible talent.
yeah,
Um, but I think it speaks to the value of just having a player with size and skill because I think very much a player who is still kind of slowing down, acclimating to the game, getting comfortable at the college level. Um, but has just been wildly impactful when she's on the court. And I think it's something that you can kind of undersell if you don't think about it sometimes because like you watch things happen, like watching the Purdue game yesterday. Did she have a great game? No. But still finished with 8 points, 10 boards, 4 assists, and 4 blocks. Like,
yeah,
and it's not even just that, but it's the impact of like, oh, we have a player who's 6'5" that you have to worry about all the time. And I think there were times last year where when Notre Dame was dealing with injuries, it was like, okay, cool. Well, they were just getting switched on a lot, or they just had a lot of issues with, okay, well, when we can't really get anything out of the post or at the 5 spot, then we're just in like a little bit of a bind. And it's sorry, we have this 6'5" kid from New York that you have to worry about nonstop. And it just changes the calculus a little bit. So that's been really fun to watch because just a very different look than this team has had. Like they really have never been a traditional post team. Um, even going back through and watching all the way to like 2015, like you think about when Maddie Westball's sister was there. Even then, like she wasn't a big time 3-point shooter, Catherine, but like very much a Princeton style player who can play inside out, hit the mid range, make the right pass, like, but not really a 5. So it's interesting in seeing this new blend. And I think Kate is still getting the hang of what her placement is in a Princeton style offense. But when it does click, man, that's going to be tough because. And I think in some ways, not obviously don't want to like say like blessings in disguise or some shit because I think that stuff is like way over conflated. But um, you know, her getting this kind of minute load already, like she's played
yeah,
56 minutes in 2 games instead of like okay, playing I think what would have been expected like 30 minutes in 2 games maybe. Um, having that ability to just get reps early is going to be really big time for her development. So I'm excited with that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, kind of just the opposite of what and we were talking about with Sarah Strong and UConn injuries. Like on the flip side, Notre Dame, another team that's experienced serious injuries over the last couple of years. But the positive thing from that, is Kate is getting a lot of minutes. And yeah, I watched a good chunk of that Purdue game, and I think the beauty with Kate's situation is that, well, she has arguably like three first team All Americans in the backcourt, along with so many other top 10, 15 recruits, even with that roster that has been impacted by injuries. So if there's any place where you you have the ability to get the reps and kind of figure it out, it's nice that it's Notre Dame. When you have Olivia Miles and Hannah Hidalgo and Sonia Citron, like and so many other talented players, like it just I think she'll have the time to take the rest of this calendar year before they really get into serious ACC play, and it'll do her a lot of good. And like you said, she's still what 6'5" and can move and block and pass. So I think the acclimation period won't take too long for Kate.
Yeah, I think the one thing, and I don't mean this as a negative, but I'm just fascinated to watch because she was a really solid shooter, particularly in the mid range. Was
Yeah,
starting to expand to three at Lehigh and in AAU,
yeah,
and I don't know why, but she's started taking her guide hand off like really early, and never used to do that. And I need it. I just want it to stop because you can tell it's messing with the trajectory of the ball, and like it just is like it's an unnatural shooting form for her. So I haven't really understood that. I hope that that gets cleaned up because I hate seeing the
yeah.
players shot get messed with.
Hey, if there's any, if there's any program where they will, help with player development and
Yeah,
getting her on track. I mean, also again, this is where we're talking about breakout players, and we're obviously starting this conversation talking about first year players. They're still very young and it's like the first week. So like nerves, even if they're not playing, they're not South Carolina playing a top 10 team right away. She's got to figure, they got to figure it out. And so we know the talent that Kate brings, like I've been, following her for the last few years and is super excited. Wanted her to go to Notre Dame because knowing what her talent could bring to that team. So yeah, I think she'll figure it out. Honestly, it's a plus for me that she's that you've noticed that. I know that they've probably noticed that with her shooting.
oh yeah,
So again, and it's another reason on a kind of a separate topic of you know non-conference schedules and fans especially always wanting, of course we want to see great matchups early, but there's also a flip side of like if you're a top program, there's different priorities that go into scheduling, and so it could be good too to have some matchups where you're not pressed going into the fourth quarter and you have some time to kind of figure things out with live game rep action. And so I think that is helpful in a case like Kate's and others that we may talk about. There's going to be plenty of tense, high pressure basketball this year. It doesn't
yeah.
need to start November 1st and extend all the way out through April. So yeah, I'm excited, really excited for her. And I think we're going to look back on it and like, oh, was there ever a time that Kate had a slow start? Because her skill set will show.
Yeah. I love you mentioning that because I think that's such a good point. It's just everything is different. Every program's in a different spot. I think like
Yeah.
obviously there was a level of like, okay, we know there's going to be injuries to start the year. We have to kind of start slow. And hey, they still play USC in 13 days. So have fun.
Yes.
Uh, speaking of Notre Dame though, breaking news actually, no, and I don't mean this to sound bad, but Notre Dame just lost out on a top 15 recruit in the upcoming 2025 class. Deniya Prawl, a 5-star wing out of Canada,
Mm.
has committed to Tennessee, which I
Ooh,
actually, it's fun. I think Deniya would have been a real, I don't know how much you've watched of her. I think she would have been
I've
a
heard
really
the
fun
name,
fit.
but yeah,
Yeah,
I
because
haven't
she
watched her.
was, her final three were Baylor, Notre Dame, and Tennessee. I think she would have been a
Ah,
really
okay.
good fit
Yeah.
at all three programs, but I like Tennessee for her. I'm right about that tonight. But just wanted to get that out there. But
Hey, we got breaking news in the
hey,
podcast episode. There
had
we
to.
go.
I just saw it. So, um, but continuing on the Notre Dame track and starting to look at, more of like getting into talking about some of our, senior year veteran players. Um, Liatu King has been phenomenal for Notre Dame and somebody who I was, I don't want to say that I was like quote unquote concerned. I was interested to see what her impact would be like coming to Notre Dame. I knew she could come in and play a role. I wasn't sure entirely what it would look like because Pitt was just in a tough spot as a team that with a lot of turnover last year. To very clearly somebody who is talented and can make an impact, but I wasn't sure what it would look like, transitioning to a higher level in the ACC. Um, and she has just been unreal, man. Like the rebounding, like she has single-handedly changed the rebounding for them as a team. And granted, we have to watch it against better competition, of course, but like defensive rebounding was one of the biggest issues for this team last year. And she's just tearing completely tearing the glass apart, getting every board possible both directions. But also like I've been really impressed watching the way she's played in transition too. Like this team noticeably, and I think part of that I was with Olivia coming back, but like
Yeah.
they want to run, 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 run. And she plays a big part of that. Like she's been huge ripping boards, getting out herself, pushing outlets, um, getting out in general. And I've really enjoyed that from her. I think she's fit in really well in Princeton quicker than I thought. I do want to say though, I again want to see how it looks like in the half court against teams that are able to match up a little bit better. But I mean, her ability to just quickly attack. She's averaging 4 offensive rebounds per game right now, 13 as a whole. And then her defensive impact's been phenomenal. Like, she's a really good rotational defender. She can play one on one. Like, just having a player who's played over 100 college games that can step in and be this level of player for them has been huge. Do you know what she's shooting from the floor right now?
Well, while you were leading in, on the big screen
Oh,
or
no.
to my
Yeah.
side,
Well,
I pulled up the stats again because I know she scored over 20 at least once, and I know she has had some big rebounding performances. But yeah, I've now pulled up the game log, and yeah, the stats, you didn't even undersell them, but still somehow looking at the actual
it
stat
feels like
line,
it. Yeah,
it is
exactly.
actually undersold of how much of an impact she's made on both sides.
Yeah. Shooting 80% from the floor so far.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. Um,
Yeah, she had a horrible shooting performance of 75% from the field after shooting 84.6% from the field. So, really, really slacking there, on the shooting percentage.
yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's interesting too. Like I don't think Purdue's going to be bad this year. Like I think Purdue's going to be better than they were this past season. Obviously, they had some
Yeah.
turnover, but they made some good moves in the portal. Like that wasn't just like a we're playing nobody.
No, they had
I think
they started off. I watched the kind of the condensed game earlier today to just catch back up. And, it doesn't help when, Notre Dame starts off shooting, lights out and you miss
yeah,
like your first, 10, 12 shots. That's probably not going to be a good recipe to compete against Notre Dame. They, after it was like 32-9, they kind of locked in and kind of made it kind of even. Then, Olivia Miles hits a half court buzzer beater. It's like, what can you do? What can you do? It's good experience for Purdue. So excited to see their pieces come together too. But yeah, Leah too, like she's incredible. I It doesn't always work, and we may talk about more transfers as this conversation goes on, but especially when the situation at Pitt that you noted, but also just being that focal point and then going to another program where there are, now multiple focal points and how you can fit in. I think this might also be another situation where, because of the early injury impact, she's been able to settle in quicker and also have a pretty substantial role sooner than maybe even she would have expected. And so that's allowed her, and also it's been very helpful for Notre Dame. I think that as much as their guards are, arguably it's the best, backcourt in the country. Um, at some point this year, they may get locked up or have foul trouble. And having another player who's used to being that person where, shot clock going down, I can make a play, I can get to the line, or I can play great defense and score in transition. I can get boards on both sides. You know, as much as talent has grown across the country, the best teams have the best rosters, and you need as many great players as you can. You can field on a roster. And so, what excites me about even a limited Notre Dame is that like all of their top players can do like 4 or 5 things
hmm
really well. They're not just great 3-point shooters, they're not just great passers, they're not just great defenders. They're all of those and more. And she's just another one that has been added to that list. So it's the rich get richer, but it's also fun for us fans to watch how this goes, and also for her, like the programs that almost every player that has not played at Notre Dame has played at a program that has not been as successful as the Fighting Irish. So it's cool for her to be playing this well on a national contender, and so I'm happy for her, with this hot start, and hopefully it continues.
Yeah, something I'd add too, like I was thinking about it earlier before the season started, but now watching it play out, I'm like somebody who I think sneakily could like really make it as a pro. Obviously need to. There's always going to be aspects of like continuing to develop as a player, but like just, I mean, a 99th percentile type hustle player who is just able to, outplay someone of the things that come with like, oh well, too small, this, that. I'm like, I don't know, man. Like I watch a player who can do that, and there's a role for that kind of player. Whether
Yeah,
it's in the
yeah,
W or overseas is a conversation, but I'm excited for
for
that with
sure. And
her.
just a quick kind of addition there, like kind of talked about it or alluded to it a little bit with Joyce, but like there's something to be said. And I might just be making this up on the fly right now, which might be the first of many things in this conversation. But like she's 6 foot or listed as 6 foot, and I'm a big fan of players that have skill sets that would be like, oh, that's a 5'8" to 5'11" guard that is really does really well at that or excels at that, and then someone with a skill set that's like that's a 6'2" to 6'5" player that can do that. Like she's getting what four offensive boards a game or whatever like that. How many players listed at 6 feet do that? So like I think a player that plays, you know, outside of their listed height or whatever their kind of physical attributes are, that's going to play obviously in college basketball and of course at the pro level. So, and also for Liatu, like when the preseason transfer list came out, like who's going to top 10, who's going to make the biggest impact. Again, of course, Notre Dame, did really well in this offseason, getting, Liatu as well as Liza Carlin, who I'm a big fan of Carlin and seeing her at Marquette and want her to get healthy because she's another critical addition to this team. Um, but there wasn't as much press for Liatu, and so I guess it's
Hmm.
cool to see like she deserves the spotlight as much as anyone else. If you've watched college basketball, are her abilities. So just hopefully this hot start can continue.
I totally agree. Well, speaking of more players who have kind of been able to keep running with that, I want to talk about Jordan Hobbs now from the University of Michigan, someone who I'm really high on for next level impact. Had her on the film room before the season started. And obviously, Michigan took on South Carolina right away to start the season. And um, part of what was really fun in that game for me is like, I think there's a tendency to look at Michigan and like they're a team that plays a little bit slower. They're more methodical. It's very set heavy. But watching them, like, it's a very pro style offense. Like, it's a ton of like handoffs, flares, like doing a lot of multi screening actions. And I think part of what was really fun in that, I mean, they played Jordan at the four primarily in this game, and you got to see her really put like South Carolina's biggest trouble was defending those actions when she was coming off to take a shot or screening herself. And I think part of what was really fun is watching all the different things that Michigan did to get her going. She finished 6 to 22 in this game. Like obviously got to shoot better than that, but I also think that kind of undersells her impact in that game. Um, just a player who has gotten demonstratively better every season. Really took a step last year. Um, and I think I'm just wildly excited to watch her keep growing this year because there was a real chance for her to like, it's always difficult when she was her and Greta Camp Schrader, the only two seniors on the team. Well, the only two seniors from last year's team out of, I believe, three players who were still on roster after last year. And you just kind of never know where that's going to go, right? Like, do you, with this kind of freshman class coming in, do you step up and you're able to like really become that vocal leader and be somebody who can do more on court, takes what's there for you. And she's really seeming to run with it so far. So I'm just excited about that for her because she's taken double digit shots in both games. It felt like she rarely did that last year or just in general, the prior couple of years. So again, just watching her come up has been really fun. And I'm excited to see what she can keep doing for a Michigan team that I think is just going to be better than people anticipated. Um, Not
Yeah,
even just based off that SC game. I think just talent wise overall, this is going to be a really fun team to watch in the Big Ten.
for sure, for sure. It was an unknown. Obviously, Michigan over the last 4 or 5 years has been one of the most consistent Big Ten teams, is just as well as just teams around the country, and a lot of those players that created that new level of expectation for the Wolverines are playing in the W or have graduated. So you didn't know. I just didn't know what it would be like. Obviously, having a very talented first year class come in was exciting, but then they had a key transfer, Layla Filia, going to Texas, and it, it we knew there'd be opportunity. And so yes, that South Carolina game was a surprise. On Jordan Hobbs, obviously, for those who will be listening, who are listening to this episode, like I'm a huge Jordan Hobbs fan. Hashtag Jordan Hobbs Hive. Been just watching her just as a Big Ten fan for the past few years, and even when Michigan had a veteran roster, she popped out to me because she has just always had that confidence. Like she's always played like she knows she's really good, and she's gotten better from there. And so even in the South Carolina game, like yes, she did shoot what 6 for 22. Uh, Most of those were threes. Think it was like let me see if I
She
have
took
it up on here.
16
Like
threes in
five
that
for
game.
16 from three, which is like 31%. Not horrible. There's plenty of people who shoot worse. And also, if there's any game where you're going to be inefficient from the field, I'll give you a pass if you're doing it against South Carolina. There's not many that have an efficient, especially if they're guards or shooting from the perimeter. I think in the Lehigh game, she shot 70%. Obviously, Lehigh is not South Carolina. But what I loved about that game, watching it, and this has been consistent with watching Jordan over the last couple years, is that like in football when a quarterback or someone makes a bad play, they throw a pick or they, a penalty, and it's like, wipe it, move on to the next play. Like Jordan is one of the best, I think, at that. Obviously, I can't see into players' minds. But like just watching her, like her confidence, when you have confidence as high as Jordan and you make a mistake, some can really drop down and like not be aggressive. But Jordan literally comes back after she like maybe airballs a three. She'll come back the next possession that she has a open shot and she'll shoot it. And she made it. Like every one of her, I think she shot a lot of free throws. Maybe in that game, I can't. Or she shot 2 free throws. But the 6 shots that she did make, I don't know. They felt like they were more than just one shot made.
Yeah.
Like she was probably the key reason that game stayed close. There's a few runs that she just started by herself, especially in the second half where South Carolina, I thought like, okay, first half was close. South Carolina's going to get this to 10 points and then kind of ease away. Every time they got to like 6 to 9 point lead, Jordan Hobbs would make a play, and then there's a timeout on the court. And Jordan Hobbs is like running back to her sideline and jumping up and celebrating with her teammates that is still close. So yeah, big fan of Jordan. Hope she keeps that confidence, and especially with the young talent around her, if they can keep growing and improving, then that only makes her job easier, and hopefully will keep Michigan going. I think they could definitely compete for one of those bubble spots, or they can maybe shoot a little higher during the regular season. So excited to see it play out.
Likewise. And I just love what you mentioned about like the confidence. I think that's such a key part, like having that confidence to keep doing what you do, especially as a player who like your primary role is like being a player who can take and make shots and play off of that. And like obviously I want to see her keep because she's a player who can get into the paint and continuing to get
Yeah.
better at that. Like I want to see that because she's a really good passer. Like but I also thought defensively, like she played really well in that game defensively. And I think to me, like that's the thing I look at because so often people look at a big player who's a shooter and they're like, can they defend him? Like she's like you can definitely say that she's a little bit more slight, especially as kind of a four. She's a little bit more of a tweener at the 3-4. But I don't know, man. I just think there's a role for players like that in the pros. So I'm excited to watch her keep growing. Um, let's talk now about somebody who has just been, for those who have not been paying attention to Rutgers basketball, Destiny Adams has maybe one of the craziest stat lines to start a season that anybody has in the country right now. Averaging 27 points and 15 rebounds to start the season while shooting pretty well from the floor, 49%. Rutgers has won 3 games to start. They haven't played a massive game yet. I think they have a couple of good non-conference games coming up, but like that kind of production is noteworthy. Again, for people who weren't paying attention, she really took a leap this last year playing at Rutgers, and I felt it was notable. Like I always liked her at North Carolina. I thought that she was a real impact player, somebody who could make something happen. Um, but like some other players, like just didn't quite fit the way that they played. And I think watching her go to a team that plays with more pace and tempo at Rutgers, like she has been so dynamic. So what have you thought of Destiny so far this year and just in general from the past couple of years?
Yeah, yeah. Also, huge. There's probably not a player that we name on this podcast that I'm like, oh, not a huge fan of them.
Yeah.
But Destiny. Watching her in North Carolina, seeing the moments where she did, kind of, pop. Uh, I was very curious about how it would work going back. Going back, I think home. She's from that area to Rutgers, and yeah, I think she just needed kind of space on the floor. I mean, it's just a lot of great talent at North Carolina, and she was one of those talented players. And she went to Rutgers, and I think the best way that I can describe Destiny is like work rate. Like she works so hard on the court. Like you can see it. Like she's crashing the glass on both ends. She, plays up tempo. Like she has high energy, and she just her persistence, her resilience on like each possession. Sometimes it can result in 2 fouls early in the first, but if she's on the floor, she's producing. Like I'm sure, like her per possession, to get into the analytics or whatever, like she's probably up there. And again, like you mentioned it, like these are efficient games. I think the first game she might have scored like 14 or 15, but the last 2 games, these are like video game numbers. Like I
Yeah.
think 36 and 22. Like I don't care who the opponent is. Like that, that is activity. So I'm just really happy for her to get this opportunity. Uh, Obviously, Rutgers in the Big Ten. Uh, Most nights they're going to be playing against a really good team. So I'm excited to see if this can translate to conference play. I haven't looked at their schedule and see if they have other notable non-comp matchups, but she is a key part of that program that's trying to get back, trying to rebound and get back up to conference and national prominence. And just couldn't be more excited for her to just kind of have the space, the opportunity to showcase a very dynamic skill set. And she's shooting threes. I don't think I think she was 0 for 3 in the 36 point. She could have scored 40. She hits a couple threes. So she can score. She's more than just a post player. So excited to see, if this can continue.
Yeah, she can really face up too and attack the basket.
Yeah.
I think that really stood out this last year. And for reference too, in terms of talking about the per possession stuff, the player currently leading the NCAA in field goals made, field goals attempted, and free throws made and attempted, Destiny Adams.
Look at
Like,
that. See, I had a feeling. I had a feeling. I'm not the biggest analytics person in terms of knowing how to work it, but sometimes you just know, like she has to
yeah,
be up there. So that's awesome.
absolutely. Yeah, I think they have Rutgers has Virginia Tech, Princeton, and Marquette in a 10-day
Ooh,
stretch from the
okay.
19th to the 29th. So that'll be a good litmus test to all 3 teams that are going to be vying to be in the NCAA tournament this year.
Yep.
So that will be fun to watch. We're going to learn a lot more about Rutgers. Obviously, Keomi McMiller's been very fun to watch. Uh, so yeah, a lot to check out with that moving forward. Moving on to another player. Okay, let's talk about Madison Conner right now over at TCU because
Yes.
obviously, again, somebody who I think unfortunately, like just due to injury, went under wraps last year, had the massive 40+ point game early on
Yeah.
in the year, um, but then just gets injured before I think it was even like maybe a couple games into Big 12 play. It wasn't long. But is back and is still just bombing away from deep, averaging 19, 5, and 6 right now. Um, what did you want to talk about with Madison? What had you most excited for this one?
Yeah. I mean, even going back to Arizona, I remember watching some some random Arizona game, and then all of a sudden this guard gets subbed in and just starts bombing threes, and I'm like, who is this person that is just can
Currently
come into
averaging
this game
11
and
and a half threes per game right now, by the
yeah,
way.
just changed it. And so then transferring to TCU was excited because just more opportunity. Like you mentioned last year, such a hot start for a team that was basically Frankenstein together with a bunch of transfers, and then it went from that to we need walk-ons and to field a roster that can play. And so last year, with that great start, kind of became a wash, and then they kind of tried to put it together towards the end. This year, getting even more incredible talent from other conferences and teams. And so I think it's resulted in giving it's not so much pressure on Maddie to have to do all the roles. Like she'll have space to shoot. And of course, some nights is going to be 1 for 11, but other nights she's going to set a record for most threes in a game, and she's going to probably do it before the end of the first half. So for me, like I was just thinking about this earlier today. I'm like, Maddie deserves like a March Madness moment where like people have not seen her play. It's some first or second round game, and she has like 25 points in the first half or something because she's hit 7 threes. Like I want that for her. That's the type of player she can be. Every team wants a player where it's like they've hit 5 threes. They're 6 out of 7. They're 9 out of 12. And so I'm excited about the roster that TCU has and the opportunity that that can give. Maddie, and she also I think she's averaging, or she has 7 assists, 5 assists. Like she's facilitating as well. I was watching the highlights of a game, and again, they're not playing the top competition yet. But she can put the ball in the deck. She's not just a spot up shooter. She can catch and dribble and facilitate. And that team now has Donovyn Hunter, Haley Van Lith, a couple other guards that can average 5 to 8 assists a night. So really excited for her not only to have more opportunity to shoot open or close to open threes, but also an opportunity to showcase, her full skill set, as a guard. So, yeah, hopefully they can stay healthy. Excited to see what the Big 12 is this year with, Texas and Oklahoma leaving. But there's, still great teams in that conference and new teams coming in. So, yeah, big Maddie Conner fan. Uh, I think I heard in the game that I don't know if this is every day, but like she has to make 500 threes a day. I heard a really wild stat, and I'm like, you know what? That's wild for most players, but I could totally see Maddie Conner, being like, I can't leave this gym until I hit 500 threes. So that's her dedication. Not surprising to see her, breaking records.
Yeah, no, and I misspoke too. So she actually played the majority of the Big 12 season last year. I forgot that she was late when she got injured in that.
Yeah, I think that either she was hurt. There was definitely some injuries there for her, and like they're obviously the team. So
Yeah,
yeah, but hopefully this year is different than January through early March that happened last
absolutely. And we're gonna learn a lot about this team this week. They play NC State on
year.
it's either
Yeah,
Saturday or Sunday, whatever day the 17th is. I can't do days in my head right now.
yeah.
So that will be again a good
That will
litmus
be an
test for them.
interesting matchup.
Yeah,
Yeah,
very excited for that one. Um, okay, moving to our next player. This can kind of transition to us talking about the sophomore year players as well. Uh, the Stanford Cardinal, like, wow, I was not
yeah.
ready for
Speaking of
this.
threes,
I
speaking
think
of
again,
threes,
like a team very clearly that still had talent, even with everyone
yeah,
transferring out. They had some really good transfers in, but they have just completely changed play style to a degree. Like they are playing faster. They are very clearly emphasizing threes. They're 61st in the country in 3-point attempts per game. Um, Currently second in the country in makes per game
yeah,
at 15, which is just again, it's just been a stark difference from this past season. Again, the smaller team, obviously very different when you don't have Kiki Iriafen and Cameron Brink on the same team, but it's been
Yeah.
really fun to just watch them play kind of different. And especially too, like they're playing guard by committee. They're playing like five guards that are all like averaging pretty significant time. So it's just been very cool to watch them all play in this way. Particularly, like we didn't even have her on the list. I did just want to shout out really quick because she's been fun to watch. But Janiyah Harriel playing as well as she has been very fun. She's contributed highly to bombing from three. She's at shooting almost 70% from deep on 5 attempts per game. And they haven't played a bad schedule. Like they ripped through Gonzaga. They destroyed Washington State. Um, this has been fun, but I want to turn it over to you to talk about Elena Bosgana, who has been like, I mean, when you're looking at most improved, if the Pac-12 still existed,
Yeah.
most improved player of the Pac-12, averaging 17 and 6 right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're one of the teams I've caught up with over the weekend. Obviously, was excited to see on Sunday. There was, great matchups, and then, conference or championship soccer games go overtime, and so the TV
Yeah.
coverage got all thrown off, and so they were kind of one of those that got bumped to a different channel. But then I checked in, and it was 26-4, Stanford over Gonzaga, and I'm like, whoa, I was not expecting that. Then I watched the game again, or the full game today, and yeah, I mean, Stanford, it's still early, but once again, like last year, with the transfer of like, Lauren Betts to UCLA, and they were, in the preseason polls, early polls, like Stanford was what in the, 15th or, closer to 20th. And then, they have that Indiana blowout, and everybody's like, oh, Stanford's really good. And they race all the way up to, the top five. A different kind of surprise this year is just like you mentioned, in terms of play style. Like it almost feels very Stanford, just because it's a great, college institution, that they would do something like this. Tara Vanderveer, retires. There's, all these questions based on players coming out, transfers coming in, and then you watch the first couple of games, and it's like almost everyone is shooting threes. And not only are they shooting threes, but they're swishing these threes. These aren't
Mhm.
like lucky, like their ball is rolling in and out or having some fun bounces. Like they're making threes like they shoot, hundreds a day. They legit have like 6 to 8 quality 3-point shooters, and I might actually be underselling that. So it's really fascinating. It's funny you mentioned the 61st in threes attempted, but second in the country in threes made. Like obviously, you would think, I'm gonna say, that they're gonna have some negative regression and they're not gonna be shooting like 70%.
Yeah.
But again, like they're you got the X's and O's. I don't understand all of, sets and formations and strategies and like how they, attack an opponent, but they're getting quality looks. These aren't like contested threes. I haven't really seen many of those. So yeah, I'm excited to see this Stanford. I think maybe their biggest enemy might be flights, and can they play
Yes.
when they have to fly across the country, and how the scheduling. I haven't looked at the scheduling and see if they can, like, if they just stay on the East Coast for 2 weeks and then they get to go home for a week. But it just might be jet lag that could doom them, and that would be a shame. But yeah, Elena Bosgana, she's another player like a Jordan Hobbs, that when there are more, are players that had more usage, and she was a role player, she didn't get as much opportunity. But the opportunities she did get, you'd be like, whoa, like who's this player? Like she's what, 6'2", 6'3". She can obviously shoot, but she has, a three-level ability. She hasn't had to use it, but she can hit mid range. She can drive. Obviously, her perimeter shooting is, what she's best at. But with the change in roster, she's obviously early in the season taking advantage of it, and also just a senior, so that veteran presence, been at Stanford, understands, what's expected, and can be a leader for these, younger players, the sophomores that are there now, the transfers that have come in. Um, and someone that, I'm a believer. For me, like I root for everyone. So anybody that like has a really good game or is like 6'2" and above, I'm like, hey, there's a case. She could play pro basketball.
Yeah.
Let's just play it out. Why not? Let's have some fun. So yeah, like I think she's still scratching the surface of what she can do. And thankfully, for her with just more opportunity, with, outgoing players, I think that, she's intriguing. She's intriguing to me. And if they can keep shooting, if these guards, very talented guards, by the way, like I remember seeing a lot of these names on, the ESPN Hoop Girls Top 100, and they're all like top 30 players. So it's no surprise that they're starting to play well. But she is definitely one where this is a year she can make a lot, especially playing ACC. Going to be playing a lot of great teams consistently, and so great opportunity for her to get her name and game out there for more fans.
Yeah. Um, One of my favorite players to mention, and part of why I wanted to pair this with looking at the next group, is Nunu Agara. Like,
Yeah,
I was really excited watching her last year. She only played like 12 minutes per game in Pac-12 play.
yeah,
But like every time she came in, it was like, there's Nunu Agara. Like she'd get a key board, get a key putback. But what stood out to me was I'm trying to remember which game it was. I want to say it was the Iowa State game when she played like some awesome perimeter defense when they were really struggling to defend Emily
yeah,
Ryan. And I remember watching that game like, wow, okay, like this is like you can see the vision. Like, yes, she's a little bit smaller at the four at 6'2", but like can really move her feet, has a good feel for the game, and she has just exploded for them. Because to me, like, I think the biggest thing I'll be looking for is like how does this continue out? Because right now, so Nunu's averaging 13 field goal attempts per game, but then they have 9 players who are all averaging like 3 or more shots per game. Most of them are between like the 6 to 7 shots range. So it's kind of like it's a lot of scoring by committee right now.
yeah,
And it's really hard to do that when you don't have a player who is taking and making a lot of shots that can really be a focal point. And Nunu has been that so far. Like that's what's been really fun because similarly to like it's not like they're like world beating changes compared to last year, but they're just playing with more speed. They're playing with more intentionality to spread the
yeah,
court. And you can see what that opens up for a player like Nunu. Like so much of her scoring has come out of that same area that Kiki and Cam scored out of, like playing out of the pocket, playing, from the slot in and attacking the basket. Um, and
yeah.
it's been fun because she's just attacking different kinds of posts in different ways. And hey, she's shooting it more too. Like she took some threes last year. She's taking over to a game right now. Again, it's been like 7 shots total, but still, that's something. So I'm gonna hit it until the day I die. But then she's also really getting into her bag as a passer and like showing stuff. She's actually leading the team in assists per game right now. Which again, I think that's the other thing I'll be looking for because they don't have a
Yeah.
player averaging more than 2.7 assists per game, which is interesting.
They're too busy making threes, Mark.
Correct.
Everybody's making threes.
Too busy
Everybody's
making
shooting and making
threes
threes.
to yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's been good ball movement. Like I don't want to
Yeah.
undersell that.
No,
But
no,
like
it's
point being, she's just been really good. Like, and this doesn't feel like a fake leap. Like this very much feels like, oh hey, I'm in this new role. I'm stepping up. I'm ready to go. Like I don't know if she's going
yeah.
to average 17 a game for the entire calendar year, but I feel pretty confident saying she's going to be really good.
I agree. I agree. Surprise, surprise. I agree with everything Mark is saying. But I think she is the most important player on that team. Again, a shocker of a comment for like a top 10, high school recruit coming in. But her ability to have, if she can create this gravity, within the 3 point line, and obviously if she, shoots to threes a game and can make, 1 to 1.25, whatever the proper percentage would be. So I'm thinking about the ACC, and like there have been some great posts uh, that have been there, but this year I don't know. I'm trying to think through all however many ACC teams there are, and I don't know if they're like some dominant, like Liz Kitley is not in Virginia Tech anymore, and you know, uh, I think even with her, playing in the post, being 6'2", I feel like she's not gonna potentially, I mean, who knows what conference play will show us, but if she can command that gravity within the paint, and like you already mentioned, she's facilitating, they're moving the ball. I think she could really make this work, not when they're just playing, a non-conf opponent where they know they can win by 40, but in those games where the perimeter players get locked up a bit, or they're having trouble moving the ball. She can get to the line, she can put the ball on the floor, like you mentioned, she can attack from different spots in the half court. Um, you know, if you needed a player to be like, we need you to be important, I would be very happy to have Nunu be that player for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm really excited to see Stanford. I'm trying my best not to underestimate Stanford early again, like I did last
Yeah.
year. That's the big big in me. I didn't want Indiana to get beat by 40 in that game, and then they're playing Indiana coming up. So going to Bloomington. So we'll see how that goes. But yes, Stanford surprising in a very positive way so far.
Yeah. And I think it's funny because I'm just looking through the ACC right now, and like really Notre Dame, uh, yeah, Notre Dame's kind of the only team that really is going to
Yeah,
play all that big. Looking at everybody in the ACC, like Miami's has some size, BC's more like length, not really size. Same thing with Georgia Tech. Clemson's going to be pretty small. Cal's small. Pittsburgh,
yeah.
same. North Carolina is a little bit bigger, but
Yeah, see
TBD.
the
So it's
young the teams that have like the size maybe advantage are like young talent still trying to, we'll see how, they get acclimated to college ball. But yeah, I mean, there's opportunity. I mean, I think I was, had all the conference preseason awards and rankings up, and um most of those are tatters by January of those seasons, but they had Stanford pretty low on the list, or lower than a Stanford would be in a preseason. Here's where the teams rank. So I feel like Stanford could surprise there again. They're they're not going to shoot 70% from three, every game, but the way they're playing, and the looks they're generating, if they keep that consistent, they're not going to be sixth or seventh in the ACC. Would be my hot take there.
yeah, no, I agree with that completely. I was that was like my biggest thing looking at the initial AP poll, not this week's one, but the one that came out before the season. I was like, I just think Stanford should be ranked. Like I understand why people didn't rank them after like, yes, Kiki's gone, Cam's gone. They always have a player who breaks out and kind of like there's just too much talent there. And especially watching just new offense, yeah, you see it. Um,
Yeah.
moving ahead, continuing on our sophomore year breakout candidates, want to quickly hit on Kassan Prosper,
Yes.
who has just she's healthy. She looks like she's added some meaningful mass on, which has let her play kind of 3 and 4. And what was really fun yesterday in that Purdue game was getting to watch her and Emma Risch both play together, who just like two
Yes.
players who have not gotten a ton of court time. And I thought they both looked like you can see the potential of like there's a lot of length, a lot of ability to just kind of play multiple positions, shut things down, switch. And I thought Kassan had some awesome defense last year. Like there were so many times where she's like so athletic, so long, where like she just gets herself into foul trouble or out of position because she's just so capable of like being reactive. And yesterday I was like, you can really see her sitting down and defending things. And I was like, that is exciting for me. Like without even thinking about offense, I was like, that kind of defense. Um, at what I think Kassan's 6'2", like being able to do that at that size and just having like a healthy player who can be an
Yeah.
impactful part of that defense, phenomenal. So I was excited about that yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah. And the quick points I'd add for her, I mean, like you said, very athletic, but also came to Notre Dame extremely young. I mean, what, she was
Yeah,
17,
17.
and I came like, there was an accelerated kind of timeline to get her to South Bend. And so kind of looking back on that to now, like it was awesome to see her pop immediately with the offensive talent. And you could just, in her athletic ability, you could just see like, wow, like I totally understand why they would want a 17-year-old to try to get into college, or, early and contribute. But with that, you may lose things in terms of, and then health obviously is a key factor there too. But sometimes you can bring the skills you're already really good at, but then you're not able to develop and kind of have that game, the full game slow down. So the fact that like now she's healthy, and then you're seeing the other parts of her game come into focus is really exciting for her. And so again, she's still very young. Uh, it's cool to see. Like I had to check, online. Like she's still listed as a sophomore. It
Yeah,
feels like she's been at Notre Dame for 3, 4 years now. So I'm excited for her to have a healthy year, and the more reps she can get. Is also Emma Rich, big fan. Um, Athletic, can hit threes. Like it's just, and then she's kind of the forgotten recruit, even though she was like top 15. Like it's just these recruits that are top 20, but like they've been hurt or they're on the bench. It's like they
yeah,
were dropping 40 plus a night in high school, and we're like McDonald's All Americans. Like she just needs to get on the floor. So excited for both of them. This season.
definitely. Let's talk now about Addy Brown over at Iowa State.
Yeah,
Going through and watching her clips today was really fun for me because I hadn't gotten to watch Iowa State yet until today. And they're still obviously working through all the new players on their team because they added a lot and a lot of
yeah,
meaningful depth too. But I think the fun part is like, and I'm glad you listed Addie for us to talk about because she just looks like complete, like not that she was a bad athlete last year. I think very clearly a good athlete, but like you can tell watching her, she's like that much more comfortable on the court. She just looks that much more sure in like her movements and everything she's doing. And I think that's going to be big. Obviously, again, having more tests coming up will show us a lot more, but I think has really cut down some of the turnover stuff and is starting to just continue to see things really well. Taking more threes, like there's just a lot there to be excited about as a player that can kind of play everywhere and be such an impactful player at the forward spot.
yeah, yeah. No, I just wanted to remind myself of where the media and coaches coming into the season had players and teams, and the Big 12 still has so much talent. Across whether it's Kansas State, TCU, Baylor, Colorado, like great players still, but she was not on the preseason Big 12 list, and that to me feels kind of criminal,
Yeah,
especially with how she finished the year. She was great, especially for a first year player. What you can ask for, she exceeded expectations, but she it looked like the game was starting to slow down for her as they got into the tournament. And you never know if can be that can sustain, and then you build from that. Like sometimes there's sophomore dips, and we're only a week in, so still a lot of games to be played. But I don't understand, how she can be left off any list. Like she's definitely on the short list for all Big 12, potential Big 12 player of the year. Like, for me, that's no question. So, excited to see her and that team come together. I think the depth, no matter how long it takes for them, is going to be to gel. It's going to be an added benefit for her and Audie Crooks. Like, I mean, that that's a very exciting team, and they should be, where they are in the polls. Uh, and yeah, I just had to give downtown Addy Brown some love on the
downtime,
podcast
bro.
episode. I
That's
mean,
good.
come on. I mean, yeah, she's the sky is the limit for her. I'm not gonna be the one. We're not gonna be the ones that underestimate her. So yeah, big fan, big fan.
I guess I've been so tapped out, but that I didn't realize that she wasn't selected preseason Big 12. That's
Hey,
crazy to me.
I don't know much, but that's not something I would do. That's not
Yeah,
something I would
that's
do,
nuts.
especially yeah. There can't just one Iowa State player on the list. Like, nah, not
Yeah,
this. That doesn't sit right with me.
I concur. Okay, well, let's transition to close out on our sophomore breakout players, talking about Clara Strack at Kentucky, who watching Kentucky has been like pretty fun. Like again, a team
Yeah,
that I want to see play more and just getting into the teeth of their schedule, but like it's just like they are different with what they're putting on the court right now. I mean, playing Clara Strack at the 4, and, like, she hasn't looked bad either, which has been what's interesting. Like, when she plays the 4, I mean, like, has
Yeah.
looked very good on court, but, like, just has, like, not looked out of place playing the 4. Um, I think part of what's so fun with Strack is, like, was very, I mean, obviously a high level recruit, but, like, she was very productive in her minutes at Virginia Tech last year. Obviously, like, it's tough to come in and be a freshman in that offense, but I think that stands out in, like, what she was able to do still. But now, like, you can tell, like, again, kind of like we just talked about with Addy, like, that much sure in some of the things she's doing. One of the things I'm most excited about is how well she's shooting at the free throw line. She really struggled when she did get to the line at all last year, and
Yeah.
she's shooting like almost 85%.
They
And
look
I think,
good. Yeah,
yeah,
I've watched them. The
the
free
touch
throw
looks
attempts
good.
look good too.
She
Yeah.
hasn't made a three yet, but she's taking them. And she just looks, I mean, she looks phenomenal on both ends. She's really mobile at 6'5". I think like she's done some good stuff as a passer. Like the defense stands out all around. Like she just looks very good and ready to be a
Yeah.
big in the SEC.
Yeah, and I would why I'm excited to talk about her is that she is another player. We're talking about breakouts, and it's only been 2-3 games of calendar week into the season, and there have been some incredible first and second year performances. But Clara was took another path. Like Clara took the more traditional, I'm first year player in a big time program. She did not come, bursting out of the gates last year. She some games she didn't even play. Most games she played, I think maybe 7 to 12 minutes. And was to kind of this to spare, Liz when she got into foul trouble or if the game was, in hand. And so you could see Kenny, at least when I was watching the games, you could see uh, Kenny make a deliberate effort to not just throw her into the deep end. Not to say that that is the wrong strategy for every coach and player or program, but you don't need to do it with everyone. Like I think I was going through the top 100 recruitment rankings, and she was like 95th in the 2023 class. Like that's still really good. You're one of the top 100 players, but it's not. Uh, it's not surprising, or shocking that a 95th ranked player doesn't make an impact in their first year, second year, or third year. But as the season went on, and of course with Liz's ACL injury late, but because of that work that they put in, slowly building her minutes, slowly getting her in the system, by the time it got to March, when unfortunately that injury happened, they had already had a lot of minutes with her on the court and developing. The top level case was like, oh wow, like Liz and Clara could work together because they were a top 5, top 10 team up to that point. But when Liz went down, Clara was able in emergency kind of minutes at the end of the season put some stuff together to the point where I remember Twitter being like, oh, she's scoring 15 to 17 points. Why wasn't she playing more minutes? And it's like, not every player can do that. You can't just come out of the gate and score 15 to 20 points a game against top 10, top 15 opponents. Like, not every first year is going to do that. I watched Clara last year in November, December. Clara had a couple plays that were like, wow, that's really good. And then she'd have other plays where she was a first year player. And those are the mistakes that those early, rookie players make. So just one score for, hey, not every, first year player
Doesn't have to
is
happen
going to
right
come out
away.
of the gates storming and, putting up double doubles. You can really see that she's put in work early in this season. Like I watched, a couple of the Kentucky games, and there was one, I think she had 8 assists, eight,
Hmm.
9, 10 assists. You can see her in Georgia figuring out like the pick and roll and seeing, Clara make decisions, at the perimeter. Obviously having Clara Silva, 6'7", player, the two Claras, Silva and Strack. I'm working on nicknames. They're gonna
Clara
they're gonna be
squared is
something,
where
a
I'm at.
duo. But she looks like she's put in work. It looks like she has some experience under her belt now, and I'm very excited to see they have a matchup coming up in the next week or two. I saw one of these. I
Yeah, they
can't
play
remember which.
Louisville on I think
Yeah, there we
Friday,
go. That was a
Friday
little
or
in-stater.
Saturday.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so little in-state rivalry there. But yeah, I'm really excited to see how she, kind of goes against these, big time programs, in non-comp, but also in the SEC. But yeah, it's just score one for development. Player development, getting better each year in the season development. So yeah, very excited for Kentucky. If the guards can, they're a little light on the guard play. It's a lot on Georgia and Lawrence right now. But if they can score, that front court is with Tiani Key is all. It's very exciting to see what they put together this year.
Yeah, and I do just want to mention Tiani Key really quick as well,
Yeah,
because watching them play, like she has been fantastic. Like the athleticism completely pops. She's shooting it. Hasn't made a ton yet, but it's just like you can tell there's confidence in it. Gonna do a ton for them defensively. Like I've always liked her game. Again, like just a player who I think like didn't quite fit at UNC. Obviously dealt with a ton of injuries, but very excited for her.
yep,
Um, but after talking about Strack, I mean, we got to talk about Clara Silva now in terms of looking at our first year breakout players because, like, I mean, I remember watching her at U18 Eurobasket, and I believe she played. I don't know. No, she didn't play U20. I don't. Yeah, she. I don't think she. No, she did play U20. She played U20 and U18 Eurobasket, and was probably not even probably. I mean, she was the best player there at both events, playing as quite a bit younger than some of the players at U20 have played pro ball already. Some of them have played in the NCAA already. I believe actually I think Elena Bosgana might have played at U20 for Greece. I
yeah,
can't remember. But point being, like, just utterly dominant, and in so many ways that make you so excited looking at a player like her because she's legitimately 6'7". That's the wild part. Like Clara Strack, legit 6'5", exact same height as Liz Kitley, and Clara Silva, Jesus Christ. Clara Silva is very clearly taller than her. Like
yeah,
watching them stand next to each other, and what was so wild watching at Eurobasket and already at Kentucky too, like number one, the size and length, but also the mobility. Like she moves her feet really well. Like probably, I mean, one of the best movers I've seen at that kind of size and frame. Um, but then she also has an incredible feel for the game, like a
yeah,
really good passer. And to self plug again, like when I talked with Georgia Amore before the season started, like she was right away. She was like, "That was just different for me. Like I've never played with a post who can pass like that before. It's really caught me by surprise, and I think that's something you're going to see this year. That stood out already." She just is so good at making the right play when help gets drawn, and then she's just wildly efficient. Like she is again, like shooting 75% from the floor right now. I think she has the potential to keep expanding her range as a shooter. And it's just,
yeah,
I mean, overall, like a dominant player, averaging 5.5 blocks per game right now. Which again, we'll see how that holds up moving forward. But still, like I think she's gonna be. I mean, she is an incredible rim protector, like very mobile, but
yeah,
also times things well, sees things well. That's gonna translate. Like I think this front court, like again, there might be some games where it's not as easy to play as big as they are going to be, but like
yeah,
I think it's going to be fascinating to watch some of the teams in the SEC have to match up with what Clara Silva and Clara Strack can do because
yeah,
it's
yeah. No,
like
it's
they
interesting.
both play with physicality too. Like it's
Yeah,
not just like getting into fadeaways or easy to push them off their spots. Like there's a lot there with them. So it is very fun.
yeah, yeah. It could just be a Captain Obvious statement, but like it's helpful to be 6'7", uh, for the reason of like one of my pet peeves, and it's more of like I'm a fan. I haven't played competitive basketball in a very long time, um, but as someone who prided themselves on defense in the later years when my offense wasn't where I wanted it to be, uh, post players jumping up in the air when they have a size advantage and then getting a foul, getting a foul called on them because they've lost the advantage always, quote unquote grinds my gears. Uh, what I love about Clara is that she's 6. She don't need to jump. Like she can just stay planted and swat it, and just keep her hand straight up in the air. And because her wingspan is what 8, 9, 10 feet, it's going to make it hard for players to score. So the 5.5 blocks does not surprise me. Maybe for the simple reason that her and Clara Strack don't need to jump so much to try to swat something out. You can just put a little finger up and swat a guard's a driving layup. So that's been exciting for me. But she has like her efficiency is not just very easy layups. Like she's doing the little turn around one the Dirk one step fadeaways or whatever. You can tell a Kenny Brooks led team, like he really works, and it's been early. So she also had this before, joining Kentucky, but the moves that they have, like they really work on them in the practice gym. And he's really big on, like, from what I've seen him with Georgia and Liz, uh, it's like, we're working on these moves so you can use them. We're not just working on these moves so they look cool or whatever. Like, this is what I want you to use in the game. And so it's fun to see while they're still gelling and trying to figure it out. Also, the high-low game between the Claras have been very exciting, and like they've swapped, so they're clearly trying to be as versatile as possible. It's just really funny and exciting to see very two tall people passing to each other.
Yeah.
At some points, again, the competition will rise, but it's just unfair to, like, there's no one that can compete with these high-low passes because it's 6'5" to 6'7" or 6'7" to 6'5", and Clara Silva has been on point with these passes. So very excited for Kentucky, and definitely curious to see how this Louisville matchup goes, as well as just their SEC play.
No, likewise. As another quick one off of just in general with like mentioning Eurobasket, a player who hadn't really been on my radar until, like, I knew that she was going to UCLA, but wasn't fully
Yeah.
on my radar until I watched Eurobasket. And that's Elina Aarnisalo, who is from Finland,
Yeah.
was just like, and then we've had like quite a few good Finnish basketball players, but like she has popped early. Um, especially with Kiki Rice being sidelined currently, she stepped in as a starter, which was just not something I anticipated. I figured she would play a small role this year, as Charlie Sledger Walker is still getting back to health, but especially with Kiki out, like Alina's been good. Like, again, we can always talk about the turnovers have been a little bit rough, but you see again a freshman coming in and playing her first time. Like, watching her play against Louisville was really impressive to me because yes, you could see some of the, all right, well, there are ways that this could be more efficient, or like, you can't force it here with the pass. But Louisville is one of the hardest teams to play against just in general. With, like, I mean, they want to put you in an island, they want to make things hard, they're always physical, they have a ton of length. It's like a very almost pro-esque way of playing defense. And I think seeing Alina just like kind of pick them apart at points and be able to get into the paint too just comfortably, like, she's not an above the rim type player, but is just so comfortable with her handle and her ability to get where she wants, that I think gives this team something they didn't have last year. Like, as good as Kiki is in terms of like getting into the mid range and playing like that, like, I don't think this team really had a player who could kind of just sit down and play point last year. At least comfortably,
Yeah.
in my opinion. I think as good as Charisma Osborne and Kiki are, like, they're combo guards. Like, they're best playing at the two more often than not. And having a player like Alina who has been like this good at just kind of setting things up, settling things down. Um, and she's had quite a few like wow passes too. Like, it's not just like the easy laydowns and stuff. Like, she's done a lot of high level things. Uh, so I've been impressed with her early on.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, the beauty of this and being a fan is that I can just have wild and especially wildly positive takes off of like limited sample sizes. So I first saw her because I forgot that the UCLA Louisville game was on. I turned it on, and like right when I turned it on, I saw her score like 6 points in a row, and I'm like, "Who is this person?" And then I immediately assumed like, "Oh, she's some transfer from some smaller school, and she's a junior or senior." And so when I looked her up and saw that she was, freshman, I was like, "What?" And so I was immediately sold. So I only saw a small sample size. I have seen no turnovers. She's basically perfect in my mind, Mark, of like she's made no mistakes. She's going to, compete for freshman of the year in the Big Ten. But slight jokes aside, she really popped not only with her driving ability and against Louisville, like we know, and everyone who is a fan of college basketball knows how tough it is to play, especially against Louisville's defense. I mean, she carved through them, like in that, and a key moment of that. And that's another thing, that game, when then watching the replay, like it was not a 85-84 offense was just plentiful. Everybody's getting their shots. Like it was a tough grinder of a game, which was what you would expect with UCLA and Louisville. But
Yeah.
there was a key stretch in the third quarter, I think, when I tuned in, where she was the only one scoring. And it was like, the confidence. And we're talking about breakout players. A common trait is that they're going to be confident. But just to be a first year player and to have that. And then, again, I think they played Colgate coming out. Obviously, Louisville's not Colgate and vice versa. But I mean, she's making plays. She can score. She can facilitate. I mean, I think in one moment of the Louisville game, I mean, she had like a big block. Like she plays taller than she is. Like I think it's really cool to see. Maybe a better way to explain it is like how Leonie Fibich, it was like a rookie and made it the all rookie team, but like she's had professional, like international experience. Kind of feels the same way with Elina. Like she's played in games where she's dropped 30 plus in tournament play. Like she's not new to competition. And so, yeah, especially with injuries, in the backcourt with UCLA. I mean, I know they're glad to have her, and I'm very excited for her, hopefully to continue, even when Kiki comes back and they get some other players back, like this early experience in key moments. You love to see that if you're UCLA fan. So yeah, had to put her on the list there because I'm like, I'm sold. I'm in. Let's take this rocket ship all the way to the moon. Everybody's gonna know about her by the end of the year.
100%. To do just a quick one, because I don't have a ton to add. I think just because we haven't gotten to see Texas play a whole ton yet. But Bryanna Preston very much brings the "what if Lightning McQueen were a basketball player" type mentality. She
Yeah,
is incredible, man. Like watching
yeah,
her highlights against Southeast Missouri State, because I didn't watch that game in full. I did watch the first game in full, but Southeast Missouri State didn't watch the full game. But like she is like her first step is insane,
yeah.
first off. But then secondly, like just unreal shift with the basketball. Also, wait, I'm totally wrong. Southeast Missouri State was their first game. I'm all over the place today.
It was a SE. I think there's a SEMO South.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that was
or
their first
Missouri.
game.
Yeah.
But
They play only once. So yeah,
but
you got
her transition play was
yeah.
pretty special. Just everywhere all the time in that game when she was put in. I don't know what her role is going to look like this year, but she was an absolute blast and somebody that I'm excited to watch grow moving forward because you totally see how
Yeah,
she fits at Texas.
for sure. And another one where it's like I've seen one game, and it's early in the season. I think honestly, this is better that we did it now that we've at least seen some play versus just going totally off of projection and maybe where they played in high school for these first year players. So of course, it's a small sample size, but if you watch a lot of basketball or whatever sport you care about, sometimes you just know it might not, the outcomes might not materialize exactly how we see it. But I've only seen one game of her, and she's coming in with a once again, Texas, surprise, surprise, has like you know, a notable, top probably three recruiting class, with Jordan Lee, Justice Carlton, who've been in the scene and people have known about them. I think Bryanna Preston's like 38th in the class. And again, rankings and numbers, like they don't always match where they are in that class. But she was bringing the ball up. She was playing point. She was at the tip of the spear on both ends for Texas. And if you know Texas, you know Vic Schaefer. Like he doesn't put people out on the court lightly. Like you got to earn it in practice
Mm-hmm.
before you ever get on the court. So the fact that she's out there again with these other, and Jordan made some awesome plays. Justice was out there and played some minutes. But the fact that Bryanna's out there and her energy just leaps off of the court, the screen. Uh, to see her with Madison Booker, with Rory Harmon, like I'm really hopeful that what she showed in that first game can continue. I'm again one game. That's all I need to see. I'm all in. I'm all in. Like that energy, and again, you need that energy, especially on both ends of the court. So yeah, big fan, big fan. I will. If I see another game, she does the same thing, then we will move to hive status. That's how quickly we can do this.
Yeah.
So yes, big Bryanna Preston fan.
Assemble very fast, they do.
Oh, I don't, you got to get ahead of these things. You got to get ahead
Correct.
of these things.
You got to be first. First to plant the flag is extremely
Hey,
important.
it's fun. It's fun when it works, man. It's so fun.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk now let's talk about Kayleigh Heckel and Kennedy Smith, two players who I think have a real shot to.
All
Well,
right,
not
you
even
do
have a real shot. Like,
Kennedy. I'll do Kayleigh. If
okay,
yeah,
I'll do
because you'll do Kennedy justice. Yes,
yeah.
because
Kennedy Smith to me is like she was never gonna like. I mean, is a very she was a 5-star recruit, so I don't want to undersell that. But like a player who probably didn't get enough shine and excitement for what she can do because she is just like walking in. I mean, she was probably USC's best player in that game, in the opening game against Ole Miss. If you're talking two ways, like I think obviously Kiki did a lot of really great stuff. Obviously Juju did as well, but I think Kennedy watching her impact in that game was nuts. Her first college basketball game playing in freaking France and like played like that, like was phenomenal on the glass, was everywhere on defense, made timely shots. That is who Kennedy Smith is. I think Kennedy Smith is like one of the only players I will ever say in my life can actually guard 1 through 5. There really are not very many players who can do that because if when I call you 1 through 5, I mean you can consistently do it and do it well. That's Kennedy Smith. She's one of the best all around defenders I've ever seen play basketball. Unreal competitor. And she might not like have all American numbers, but she's going to be one of the most impactful players on the court at any given time, always. And she's going to be, in my opinion, barring injuries, she's going to be one of the best role players in the WNBA for like a decade plus. Like that's the kind of player
yeah,
Kennedy Smith is. She is phenomenal. I am excited to watch her get to play again in more high stakes games because that's where she thrives.
yeah, yeah. See, this is why I wanted you to talk about Kennedy. I knew you would
Appreciate
nail
it.
it. But no, I've watched. I've seen you. Talk about her and showcase her skill set. And you're right. Like this is just the byproduct of excitement and the talent that has come in at all levels of women's basketball. That someone as good as Kennedy playing for in a high profile program, high school program, and playing, in these all-star games. There's just so much talent that, oh, she was just like the number 6 overall recruit and just air quotes California basketball player of the year. Like that's all. And she goes to USC and immediately makes an impact. And like you mentioned, her stats are not going to pop off the screen on a nightly basis just due to having arguably the national player of the year as a teammate. But her impact is there. Like that Ole Miss game, again, if you're a fan and you a fan of Ole Miss or you have watched them, you know what type of game it's going to be, and it's fun to see teams have to try to figure that out. Uh, and every time I would look, she'd be grabbing a board or making a steal or hitting a key shot when there had been turnovers and missed shots. Having that level of composure as a first year player in your first game in a different country, you can, yeah. And the really key thing you said at the end there is that like you can already see where she can make an impact in the W. And she's first game of her first year in college, but Kennedy Smith is a known name. She's come in with a lot, even under the radar. She's still come in with a lot of expectations, and it seems like the way she played uh, really seems like she's already ahead of the curve there. So completely concur with Kennedy Smith and really excited. Again, Big Ten apologist. Love that USC, love that UCLA are in the Big Ten. We need all the help we can get. So happy that Kennedy Smith is in the B1G because I'll be cheering her on this year.
I do also need to go back. I think saying that she was USC's best two-way player was probably maybe a little too far because scoring does matter. You know, Kiki and Juju combined for 49
Look,
points in that game.
we're talking
But
about breakout players, Mark.
but I
You and
got a little
Kiki will
excited.
be
But I
fine.
will
They'll
stand
be
by
fine.
saying
We
Kennedy
know,
was
like, yeah,
yeah
they're you know, come on, they're great. Of course, they're great. But we're talking about first year, you know, and different breakout players. It's okay to get ahead of yourself for this episode. I'm
that's
going to
the
give
yeah.
you, you know,
I
as much
do.
as that counts or anything, it
We all
probably
need some
doesn't.
grace, right?
You know, but yes, Kennedy brings this out of us. So that just shows how great she is. No, it's
Precisely.
all good.
All right, get us aboard the Kayleigh Heckel train
Oh my goodness.
that I know that
Hey,
you're the conductor of.
yes, definitely have already. I mean, this is almost what 2 years in the running of the Kayleigh Heckel hype train. You know, Kate Koval teammate, so that's another reason why I'm big on Kate. Syla Swords, you know, I mean, I talk about a team. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I mean, what's USC's coach? She said that Kayleigh is like the fastest player she's ever coached, which you don't really hear that in basketball a lot. You know, you might hear that in like football or some other sport, but uh, again, I'm going to go back to confidence. She is a really, or maybe a better way, it's like she plays with no fear. That's what I've noticed about her since seeing her, you know, play in high school and play in these, you know, all-star, you know, games. She plays. I mean, what's her height? What is she? Maybe like 5'6" or something. Maybe I'm even. She might be smaller than that, but she plays downhill. She's got incredible vision. She can make threes. I don't think she shoots them like she's a 3-point specialist, but she can make threes. But really, for me, it's her ability to play on and off the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And also she's feisty on defense. Like she will get on the ground. Again, it's just so kind of like a Rory Harmon kind of quality where it's like, so what if I'm the shortest player on the court right now? Like you're gonna feel me. You're gonna know that I'm here. And Kayleigh will go 22 miles an hour into the paint and either dish it somewhere or get contact for an and one. I'm excited to see her her flexibility and her versatility with USC. Like, you know, when we watched Juju last year and knew the role and you know, were part of leading this crusade of like contextualizing Juju's volume and because you knew what she had to take on. But we also knew this recruiting class, what they're the number one recruiting class, you know, for 2024. Like we knew what was coming. And Kennedy and Kayleigh are just two of the, you know, 4 or 5 top 100 recruits that they brought in this year. But yeah, I'm excited for Kayleigh. She just you can't, even though she's probably the shortest player on the court in almost every game, you won't miss her. Like you were gonna see her on the court on both ends. She is a brilliant point guard. I'm excited for her to see just how she operates when she's not in that PG role. But yeah, I don't in another player where like Kennedy, just because of the way they play, they have 2 player of the year candidates uh, that are starters. She's probably not going to have the stat line that she would have if she played in another program where she could easily score 15 and have 7 to 10 assists a game. But she's going to make an impact along with Kennedy. I mean, they got Avery Howell. They got a couple other really incredible first year players. So I was really excited she picked USC. And, you know, first couple games can already see that impact. So even with all those words, I'm underselling Kayleigh Heckel or Heckel. She's going to be awesome. And so I'm going to be glued to every USC game, even if it is on Big Ten Plus. And I got to figure it out.
Yeah, that is the only misfortune of the Big Ten expanding is more having to be on Big Ten Plus.
Yeah,
Big
yeah.
Ten Plus works great on a desktop. not so much in the phone app.
Yeah, I trust
And
me.
yeah,
I'm the leader in emails to Big Ten Plus
yeah.
of like,
And
hey,
also,
here's some
there's no
suggestions.
TV app. Like, how do we not have a TV app? Like, what is? How are we that far behind? Flow
Yeah,
Sports has a
you
TV
know.
app, and Big Ten
You know,
doesn't. Like, that's
if you want
crazy.
another 3 hours, I can definitely talk about that. But
Yeah.
we do, you
Well,
know.
yeah, 100%. Okay. I echo everything you say. Let's talk about another guard who just played yesterday, Zam Jones over at NC State.
Oh yes.
Somebody who's very clearly going to have a big role this year. I obviously like I think part of what's interesting is like again the difficult part in being in those games is like you can see like all right still a freshman but then you also see like the moments of brilliance like you see the shot making you see the confidence but then
Yep.
you could also tell she got a little bit gassed out in that game, um, and that takes time to get used to that and playing at that kind of level reigning defending champions. But one of my players who like just like you talk about playing in just any of the All American games. I think it was the McDonald's game where you like she's just so fun, man. Like every play she makes is fun. Like that's the best way to describe her. Like she just plays with a very creative style, wants to attack, um, and she gets down on defense too. Like she plays hard. It's not like
Yeah.
she's just a one way player. So I'm
Yeah.
a big fan. And
Yeah.
also
Zam has
like
been around, and Zam has been around for like 6, 7 years. I mean, she was highlights on social media back when she was like probably like in sixth, seventh grade or something.
yep,
Like she just been it's actually kind of surreal that she's actually playing in college now because if you've watched or followed women's college hoops or just basketball in general, you've just known her name and seen her on so many highlight videos, and so it's cool to see her in college playing against South Carolina like on ESPN. And then that fourth quarter, like that game was done and she was like, "Nope,
mini
I'm gonna
Zam
make
run.
this.
Here
I'm
we
gonna
go.
make this
Like
spicy." And it's like she's the exact player. Like again, there's going to be those learning curves, going to be those first year mistakes, those rookie mistakes, but you cannot quantify the impact of having a player like that can go from 0 to 100 and put your team back in the game against the defending champions. Like they had won 39 in a row, and they were about to romp to 40, and she and like obviously Isaiah James was great defense and facilitation to help create some of those shot opportunities, but Zam brought them back in that game
yeah,
to make it interesting and to make South Carolina have to close it out. So you just every program wants a player, obviously like Zam, but for that reason, like she did not have a perfect game through all 4 quarters, but for a player like her, it doesn't matter. Like she can, erase those memories by just going like, I'm going to score 12 straight points against the best team in the country. Like it's like that's hard or something. Like she can just do that. So excited for Zam. I put in the doc that like I don't know. I don't all ACC teams and starting lineups are gonna adjust, but she's currently not starting, I believe, because they have a pretty good starting lineup. But if she stays coming off the bench, like I would not be surprised for her to be in sixth player of the year, contention. So excited for Zam, for more people to see how awesome Zam is.
I agree. She is somebody to keep watching. They just have. I'm gonna be fascinated just as an aside to see how NC State keeps putting this together because they're almost in a spot where like I won't say they have too many guards, but like getting them all to mesh is gonna be really interesting because I think that was
Yeah,
the biggest issue yesterday. South Carolina played really good defense, to be fair, but they
yeah,
also like they really struggled to just get into stuff and like
yeah,
play with pace and speed. And like when you have that many guards on the floor, that's what you need to do. It's like hard to, and again, like it's a very, like a lot of the same players from last year, but not having River Baldwin, not having Mimi Collins. There's just a lot like the role hierarchy is a little bit harder to figure out when you don't have some of that positionality on court.
yep,
Um,
yep. A great
so
experience. I mean, playing against South Carolina, if you
yeah.
take it the right way, it can really help you improve. It can also be demoralizing. I think the former will be for NC State, and they don't have much time to dwell on that because they got tough ones coming up.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk lastly in freshmen. Let's talk about Jaloni Cambridge, who had one of the best debuts, if not the best debut that anybody's had in the country. 31 points, 6 assists, 5 steals, and 2 blocks against Cleveland State, who is a very good mid-major
Yeah,
team.
yeah.
Um, she is like a perfect fit at Ohio State. Somebody with incredible control of the ball, gets down and is just like electric, playing at the top of a press, top notch competitor. I mean, she's Jordan Cambridge's sister. Of course, she's going to be that top notch competitor. That's exactly what Jordan brought to Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, like again, there's always going to be like quote unquote freshman stuff, but I think when you look at like we've talked about, like okay, it's so much of this is where you go, what your fit is, what your role is. Like Jelani's player could go and contribute at a another school that is in like okay, like if she's at USC in a similar role to like Kayleigh Heckel or something like that. But like this is when you give somebody the keys and they get the opportunity to do that, and it is very exciting to watch through one game, and I'm excited for more.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've already said it with a couple players of like, small sample size. I will extrapolate the most grand things.
Yeah.
And Jaloni Cambridge, like, she is my number one. Like, she's my number one. I saw enough. She's taking over. Is happening. But because of the points you brought up, Mark, like, she was certain number three in the class, or like
Mhm.
depending on the ratings, she was at one point she was number one, number two, number three. Doesn't matter because there's great players. Joyce is incredible, Sarah is incredible, Kate Koval incredible. You can go down the list, but it also fits, and opportunity is key. Like Sarah, based on where UConn is right now, doesn't need to score 25, 30 a game. She's probably going to have those games. Joyce is probably going to have some games where she scores 25 plus because she's 11 of 12 from the field. It just is on one. Jaloni Cambridge, like, she you look at the stat line only and don't look at that game, and you're like, oh, like they're playing, and you don't know Cleveland State. You're like, oh, like 12 or 14, but they're probably just ton of turnovers, and she was just fast break transition layups. She was making float all kinds of, even saying floaters is not even doing her justice. Like they were, above the free throw line floaters. They were 5 to 7 foot floaters. They were high off the glass. She was making fast break 3 pointers. She was at the tip of the spear of both offense and defense. I was thinking, again, context is important. I am all in on Jaloni Cambridge being like the star that breaks out and everybody's talking about her. JC Sheldon, one of my favorite college players, over the last 3 or 4 years. It is almost impossible to replace JC Sheldon and her impact at Ohio State. Also, she just joined the staff of Ohio State. Very exciting. But like, what better candidate than Jaloni Cambridge? Like in terms of being that three-level player that is making this offense go. I mean, and opening up the offense for so many other talented players. Cody basically had so much space, more space than Cody. Cody might have more space than she's ever had at Ohio State with Jaloni Cambridge in there. So it wasn't just that she scored 31. It was how she scored 31, and then all the other stats that are with it: the 6 assists, the 5 boards, the steals, her speed, her play. Like, she knows she's one of the best players in the country, and she's not going to always shoot. She's rarely going to shoot 12 for 14. She started out 7 for 7, so she actually got cold when she missed the other 2 shots. I think she is not a lock, because nothing's a lock, but it's crazy to think that she won't be in strong consideration for like first team all big. Again, all these conferences have so many great players. We need a third team all conference for all of these conferences. That's one of my like flag plants just in general. There's going to be, because social media gets, it's even getting more chaotic as the days, weeks and months go on. But there's going to be some very, very strong, heated debates about all conference teams, all American. It's just too many great players, and her name was not anywhere. She's not on the all big list. She's definitely not on any all American list that I've seen. Let me know if I'm wrong. I think she has the ability to be first team all big player of the year, uh, All-American, at least honorable mention, if not second team. I mean, the preseason list is loaded. So it's going to be hard to get in there without some external things happening. But if Juju did it last year, and you have Paige and you have Caitlin Clark, I mean, Jaloni's talent, I mean, she's up there with them. Like, you watch that game, you can't say like, oh well, she can't do this. She hit threes. She drove. She played defense. She's quick. She's athletic. She has the size. I am completely in. If you can't tell, if you're not watching on video, you might not be able to tell. But Jaloni Cambridge, surprise, is good at basketball. And I think she's in a perfect spot. Like you mentioned, she's in a great spot at Ohio State. Like, and they play up tempo. If their high pressure press defense works, I don't know, man. She's not going to average 30 points a game, but this is not her last 30-point game. I'll be safe there and say that. So that's my Jaloni is going to take over college basketball rant. Yeah, I think I'm glad she's at Ohio State. I'm glad she's in the Big Ten, because usually that's a player that terrorizes the Big Ten from outside. You're like, oh, I wish we had a player like that. Well, we have multiple players, like that across the Big. So we got to cash it in this year. Big Ten's got to win a national title. I'm continuing talking, Mark, and now I'm saying the Big needs to win a natty.
Hey, I don't want to say pressure's on, but I do think this is like a year where you look at it.
I'm putting the pressure, Mark. You don't I'll put the pressure on. It's
Kiki's 1 year at USC. I think there's pressure on them to win it. UCLA obviously has pressure to win it. They got to do it. The worst though is that I'll say this. The worst is that they beat each other up, but I kind of hesitated to say that because SEC fans could be like, well, this is every year for us. We have, talented teams. So I need the Big to, iron sharpens iron. They got to make each other better and not beat each other up so that they get upset. But I mean, you have USC, UCLA, Ohio State, Maryland, it's these top four, and other teams could to creep up in there. Michigan State are one of our favorite teams with a lot of great players. So just outside of the breakout players, these breakout players need to also help their teams compete for a natty. So it's got to be this year. Yeah, I mean, speaking on Michigan State, we can transition to talking about some players who we think have a real shot to make an actual like conference awards list this year.
Yeah.
Or an award contention, we should say.
For sure.
We already talked about Elena Bosgana, who we have as somebody who could potentially make that leap to being an all-conference player. But with Michigan State, Grace Vanslooten, who I don't know if you've gotten to watch any of Michigan State with their new look team. Obviously, we both loved what they did this past year, and I think we were both very excited adding a player like Grace, who was going to play the 5 for them, just in a role that's going to make a lot more sense for her. I think in a system that's really going to get the best out of her. And she adds so much to what they do as well. Like, I think just her ability to, like, this team, like, they love playing kind of post in to open things out. And they really struggled at times last year when they weren't able to create out of the post. And I think you add a player in like Grace, and that's just going to it just adds a very different element and dynamic. Because last year, I believe their tallest player was 6'1" for the majority of the season. And now you have Grace, you have other players with length on the team. Like, they added a ton. Like, we both love Emma Shoemate, and rightfully so, because she's fantastic and has looked really good as a starter so far for the Spartans. Like, there's a lot of great stuff here, but I think Grace is just again a player who, like, if you weren't watching Oregon, which I get it last year, you missed a lot of the forest through the trees if you're just looking at box score, because she is really talented and is going to make a huge impact on this team.
Yeah. Good use of forest for the trees there, just with a nod to Oregon's court that continues to get
which more. I will always go to bat for. I love that awesome. Court so much. Anybody who disagrees
they
is
add more trees, right? Like, I feel like
it feels like it.
This is incredible. Also, great win for Oregon, and again, welcome to the Big, welcome to the B1G, Oregon. Way to represent, taking down Baylor. I respect that. Fun game.
That
early
was a fun
candidate for
game.
one of the
It was
best.
worth staying up for, honestly.
Yeah,
Um,
I was watching football or something else, and then I saw you tweeting about it, and I'm like, let me check in on this game, and it was like right when Baylor had made the comeback. So a very fun game. But yeah, Grace, been a big fan of Grace, another highly touted high school recruit going to a big program. Was based on what was going on in Oregon, injuries and just changing roster and landscape, like she immediately was kind of thrown into the deep end, and uh, just a change of scenery. Another reason why I love the rule shift change to allow players to transfer. If coaches can transfer, quote unquote transfer, players should too. And so it gives an opportunity for a player like Grace to just have another chance somewhere else. And uh, I think when she went into the portal, there are not many people that were generally in the know thinking she would pick up a program like Michigan State. But like we are in the know, Mark, and we knew that she could go there, and how exciting that could be. And again, early, they're playing. I think they're playing tonight,
yeah, they're playing
November
Eastern Michigan
11th.
right now.
Yeah, a little in-state battle, and they're doing really well in the first half of games. Like it's like 58-18 or 55-22. Like, again, the competition will increase as the season goes on. But yeah, I'm really excited for her. She is similar to like a Destiny, Adams in terms of like work rate. Like Grace always works so hard, almost too hard sometimes, and like she has to kind of rein the energy in, so the efficiency can go up. But I think that was also a product of her having a lot on her shoulders and
Yeah,
feeling like she had to be the one. On a previous team to be like, I have to be great tonight. I have to score 25-30. With Michigan State, there's talent all around her. There's versatility around her. Hopefully that translates into her kind of settling in, working within the system, and really showing her talent. Like, I mean, again, she was a top 10 recruit, maybe even top 5 recruit coming out of high school. And so there's nothing to say that she can't really showcase why we were so excited for her to join the college game. So excited for her. She would have been in the big regardless if she stayed at Oregon or not. But excited for her to go to Michigan State, be under Robin Fralick. Like, what's year 2, Robin Fralick? Like, I mean, it's just
hmm
excited to see that team, and they still have Julia Aralt and Halleck. Like, they got a lot of exciting players that made 6th player of the year awards, or first team all big Julia last year. So Michigan State AP poll came out today, this morning, on Monday, and they are right outside. They're another team that should be ranked, in my opinion. Like, they should have been ranked coming into the season. I get why they weren't, but they're going to be ranked, and they're going to make some noise. I predict, non-comp, but also in the big as we get into early next year.
absolutely. Let's transition now to talk about Temira Poindexter over at Kansas State, who, like,
Yes.
for people who hadn't watched Tulsa, like, she's just such a versatile scorer and forward. I believe 6'1", but also plays with like physicality too. Like, can play the 4, can play the 3. And watching her at K State so far, like particularly the Belmont game, was sick. Like, I mean, she just went nuclear in that first half. Finished with 23 points. I think she had 19 in the first half though.
Yeah.
Was just like absolutely uncorking. And but I think it's so fun because you see how she can add stuff offensively, but also just with her defense. Like, that team is big. They have a ton of length, a ton of size. Even if Aoka leaves off the court, I love Kennedy Taylor, their backup center who they brought in from
Yes.
Missouri
Yes.
State. She's been really good. But with Temira, just like a player who honestly has a chance to get drafted if she keeps playing like this. Like, I think obviously if she'd stayed at Tulsa too, there would have been a chance with that. But
Yep.
getting to see her come to this level and produce early, obviously want to see that. I mean, they played 2 good mid-major teams in Belmont and Green Bay. Want to see that in higher comp, but like, can block shots, is going to be able to sit down and get steals on the perimeter and play like that. But yeah, I've really loved her addition to this team so far.
Yeah, and another player similar to Grace that had to shoulder a lot at their previous school, where it was like, we need you, Temira, to drop 20 plus, like you to keep us in these, games where we're going against, Power Five schools or just a tough in conference opponent when she was at Tulsa. Um, and kind of going back to, Liatu King in the top transfers, who's going to be the top transfer. Temira was like virtually on no list. Uh, Part of that's because there's a lot of great players transferring to other schools, and it's a lot of excitement around that. But I remember, being online and just waiting to see what decisions she would make. And when she picked K State, there's a tweet out there somewhere. It's getting harder to search for old tweets.
Yeah,
Maybe that's a good thing, but I
borderline
like receipts.
impossible.
I'm a receipt. I'm a big receipt person. I will quote tweet myself into oblivion, being like, "I said this 18 months ago." And I remember being excited about her coming to K State. And yeah, right away, I mean, that Belmont game, I mean, Ayoka Lee didn't play, I believe.
Yeah,
And
no, she didn't.
so Temira got the start. And Belmont came out spicy. Like they were up in the first quarter. They were up on K State. And then Temira just said, okay, I'm gonna take this game over. And then she just went off. And if you didn't know who she was, you'd be like, who is this player? What is she doing? Like she's swishing threes. She was playing with swag. She turned that game around, and that's only part of her game. Probably the game that the outside shooting that people don't even know. And she's got this whole post repertoire in there, and defense making an impact. So yeah, again, another player that was like Addy Brown was not on the list. And I get it. There's a lot of great players, but whether she starts or whether she comes off the bench, K-State needed a player like her. I'm a big fan of transfers now that we're in this transfer era of like matching the gaps or strengthening an area of need. Like based on like, I was a big K State fan. I was early on K State last year, but what doomed them last year was like shooting and being able to make those kind of key stops when Ayoka was in foul trouble or just the offense was jammed up. And having a player that is as versatile as her, like I think, and other just the improvement of other players around them around her. Like I'm a big fan of K State. Those teams in like ranked 8th to 13th right now are like really good teams. Sometimes that group is like, they're more like a 20 to 25 in the rankings, but Iowa State, Maryland, Kansas State, like those are some exciting teams with a lot of intriguing kind of breakout, prospects.
I agree. A lot to believe in with that team, especially too like I mean, you know how I feel about Serena Sandell. I think she's incredible and going to be
Oh
very
yeah.
good at the
Yeah,
next
yeah. We're
level.
big Serena fans.
Yeah,
Yes.
how could you not be? But yeah, to go on to our next player, I do just want to talk briefly about Gretchen Dolan because she was really good in Illinois' first game against Florida State. And I just think from a like you're talking about with a pure like fit and need standpoint, like Illinois really struggled with bench scoring last year and just like having a scoring punch outside their starting lineup. And seeing Gretchen, like there were moments with her last year, like she really showed progress as the year went on. And to see her get to this point where it's like, oh, okay, like you can like legit carry some offense for us. And she just looked comfortable and confident and also did some really good stuff defensively as well. I'm excited for that because that's, I mean, a big reason why Illinois is 2-0 right now against two pretty solid opponents.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll just add that she's like Zam in the ACC. Again, not starting lineups, and there'll be shifts and changes. Again, hopefully not due to major injuries or players missing time. But if she's the first one coming off the bench, obviously that Illinois has definitely one of the best backcourts in the Big Ten. And if they play to their potential, one of the best backcourts in the country. And they have Gretchen be number 4, who also has that size to drive and to score at all 3 levels, play, match up against, great scores from the opponents. She could be a 6th player of the year in the Big Ten. Again, there's other great candidates, but if I'm fully on my hopium and like full breakout, Gretchen has that talent. Another great, highly touted recruit. And Illinois, Shauna's bringing some talent to Champaign. So I'm very excited about Gretchen Dolan. I think that Florida State performance is really just kind of the start of something special, not an outlier performance at all. And I think the message that Coach Green has gotten through to like shoot the ball, be aggressive, sounds like Gretchen is picking up that message. So very excited if you're a Illini fan, Big Ten fan, to see if they can keep it consistent with Illinois. That's the key, is like that bench scoring. But if their players have to play great, they can't really have off games. Kendall Bostic, Makaira Cook, like one of them can, but like not two or
Can't be
three.
a whole, yeah, can't be the
So
whole
yeah,
lineup.
like that's the thing with Illinois, is like when they're all cooking, it's like like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or whatever. It's just like the superpowers are just, you can't stop all of them. But when they're not clicking, and kind of making mental mistakes, that energy can drop off, which is why Gretchen becoming a contributing factor to this team just relieves the pressure, from their starting guards. So very excited for Gretchen.
Yeah, that makes two of us because she is, yeah, just I think, especially too with talking on the six player aspect, like so much of being a six player is like being good on a good team. And Illinois starting off like this, it gets it rolling. Um, let's close out talking about Donovyn Hunter, who again, another player that we both love. Tall guards, but tall guards that are confident in what they do and like really are guards. She's kind of, in my opinion, like she's the kind of player who I think is going to be the unsung hero to a degree of this TCU team, much like she was for Oregon State last year. Like,
Yep.
just a player who never played like a freshman at all last year, was very steady, very consistent, can take on pretty much any defensive matchup and do it well, is going to be capable of knocking down open shots on offense, and also like just creating good, effective offense with the ball in her hands when running things herself. And I'm really excited to see her play in like a more up tempo system, because obviously Oregon State's a lot more like ball control, playing it slow. TCU's high pace, high tempo. A lot of like, obviously Oregon State was a very well balanced team, but like doing it differently in a team that's going to prioritize more of what they can do, playing outside and with movement. Like I'm very excited for Donovan with that, and also like again, not to make everything about going to the pros, but like Donovan's a player I'm very excited about as a pro, because she's got a lot of stuff you can't teach. So
Yeah.
I'm excited for this.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, another player like some others we've talked about already, Kennedy Smith, and like certain players that are very talented, but if you just look at the game logs, the stat lines of their games, they may not, depending on that night, pop off the screen. But the intangibles and the impact on both ends of the court, if you watch, uh, you will come away with being like, oh, yeah, she might have scored 6 points, but she was clearly the key to TCU being in that game, pulling off that upset, winning that game. What I love is I just was going through TCU's Twitter, women's basketball Twitter account, and there's just this one highlight of Donovyn Hunter just guarding a point guard, just full court, or just like, they just have a video of like 45 seconds of Donovyn Hunter just like looking into the soul of this opposing point guard, just guarding her. Like that's the highlight. The highlight, she didn't steal it or anything, but she was just menacing, like, just scaring this, poor point guard from some team. And like that just kind of represents Donovyn Hunter for me. Like she can score 15, 20 points a game. I mean, and she's already had one game where she shot like 7 threes. She can dish out 6 to 8 assists or more. She can have 4 steals. She can block. But she has that defensive intensity, just that overall intensity to her game, the things like you mentioned, the things you can't teach. And she's just a sophomore. And so if you're already saying like you can see skills that translate to the W, and she's got, another 2, 3 years, uh, it's pretty exciting. And so yeah, with other guards that bring in at TCU that either have more experience and or have more kind of national brand awareness, like a Haley Van Lith or a Maddie Connor, who's, a senior. She can kind of get lost in the shuffle, but if you watch the games, you will see her stand out. So very excited she landed at TCU. Very excited to see, what she brings this season.
Yeah, getting back to like just looking at players who are going to be at the top. So like thinking of players who might make first team all conference, players who are going to be in contention for some even bigger awards. Not that these players aren't, but I think, in looking at some of that higher stuff, I want to talk about Syla Swords and what she has done so far. And also just talk about that Michigan SC game as a whole, because we're also going to talk about Chloe Kitts as our last player. But like with Syla, um, I think, to me, I don't want to sound like elitist, but like I'm not really surprised by anything she's done because Syla is just an incredible basketball player. Like part of what's so fun with her is that, watching her at Lehigh, watching her with the Canadian national team, watching her, anywhere she's played, her poise and composure is just like ridiculous. I think that's what stands out about with her. It stands out with her always. Like that stood out with her against SC. I think like one of the most telling things, kind of like you mentioned with Jordan Hobbs off the top, like when a player misses, what happens? And I think that's so telling. And watching her like just early on in the game as SC has an awesome drive to the rim, misses the layup, but then rebounds it right away and gets it right back in. And like little things like that. It sounds small, but like seeing a player who doesn't visibly get frustrated in a game like that, like it's the game everybody was watching that day. And like you're the recruit that everybody's watching that day. And like being able to do that means a ton. Tons of moments like that throughout that game. Her slashing is like unreal. And I think part of what, again, she is like a true wing. And I feel like so many of the players who come in to the W, to the NCAA in general, like aren't really like built as wing players. Like they don't grow up playing on the wing. They either have the ball in their hands either via the post or as a lead guard coming up. And like they don't always have the I've been a wing my whole life type mentality. And it's just very different. Like you don't think about it, but it's different. Like, you have different ways of doing things and attacking and playing. And Silo just knows how to play off the ball, but also on the ball. Like she's very good out of ball screens. Already showed the stuff with confidence in her range and her shot in general, and like always brings it on defense and on the glass as well. Like an all around player who I think, is on track to be a potential all Big Ten first team player this year.
Yep.
It's going to depend highly on how successful Michigan is, but like absolutely in contention for freshman of the year too. Like not saying that I'm not, don't come at me, but like that is very possible. Like with how well she's
Yeah.
playing, Sarah, Joyce, all on like the same level. So I'm gonna be fascinated to watch that continue playing out.
Yeah, yeah, not too much to add. You nailed pretty much all of it. Another one that's just had international experience, and I think that you can't account for that of just how impactful that is, and just to how the confidence and how she plays when you've played against people that are 5, 10 years older than you, for more than one game. Also, just shout out to Olivia Olson, another highly touted recruit coming in. Like I think just the two of them paired with Jordan Hobbs and just that program, they're going to have opportunity, and so it's exciting to see just that next play mentality, that hard work ethic, the combination of those two things. So yeah, again, proud to have Syla in the Big Ten. Very, very good times here. We are rich with talent.
Absolutely. Let's close out now on Chloe Kitts, who she's played one game, but has clearly been one of the breakout players of the
Yep.
season so far. Obviously, South Carolina has so much that they can work with in their front court, but I think again, continuing to have like you're not going to replace Camila Cardoso, but having somebody who can be even more of a focal point in the front court is going to be fun to watch moving forward. And I think Chloe showing what she did in that Michigan game. Big reason that they won that game, 19-14 in that game.
Yep.
Um, was pretty much unstoppable against a slightly smaller front court in Michigan, but still a good rebounding team. What did you like about her performance and what she showed, that she maybe hadn't yet in her first 2 seasons or that she's growing in consistency with?
Yeah, again, just kind of going to the checking the preseason list, seeing who's on there. No disrespect to especially the SEC players like Madison Booker, who I was on before she even got on campus last year at Austin and being like, Madison Booker will be one of the most impactful first year players, and she was. Uh, Flage, Anissa Morrow, all these great players. Um, SEC even does a second team, which not a lot of conferences do. Chloe wasn't on that either. So like I think Chloe just having another highly touted recruit. She was 17 to 20 that ended the top 20 range of her class. A lot of great players she's had to play behind. Um, and so she can kind of get lost in the shuffle. But her confidence, her range, her physicality, she's always had the energy. She's always played like I'm not scared of anybody, but her skill set it continually gets better. And anyone, anyone who can do 19 and 14 in a high profile game, and it wasn't like this like pow pow like where's this coming from like it's just super efficient. It was like, oh, looking at the end of the game stat line, I go, oh, of course she got 19-14. It could have been 28-20. I think I like players who come in highly with a high number on their recruiting line, but then because of who they're playing with, they kind of get lost. And then fans are like, this person's washed or whatever. Like you don't give them a chance. And Chloe's one of those players where it's like, you forget Chloe is a very good player. And now she's got opportunity. And I think she has the ability to be the most important player on that team, a team that has incredible players, the most incredible players. I just think that her her energy, her ability to knock down outside shots when she can't drive, her energy on the glass. I think she has the ability to play. There's nothing that she can't do, like at least at least average. But there's so many parts of her game that are above average, and there's a number of things where she's elite. And it's hard to find that in one player that's been in one of the best, if not the best, system in college basketball. So if she's out there, you're gonna see her, you're gonna feel her. I got Chloe like first team, all SEC. Like that's been my flag plant for a player that's not on a preseason list. That's going to look really, stupid that they weren't on a list. Is Chloe Kitts. So all in, Chloe. Let's do this. I
Yeah, I
mean, she's
think
gonna be doing the work. I'm gonna be watching, but
yeah.
I'm gonna take part of the the win if she comes through.
Well, yeah, it's funny because obviously, like we've talked about a bunch. Like I think, I mean, Chloe had the numbers in that game. She's gonna have numbers throughout the season. But like you're saying, like I think it's just frustrating because I feel like so often these lists are done off of numbers instead of impact. And like, granted,
Yeah,
like you have to know and understand what you're watching to assess impact, which I think is part of it with respect. But like, exactly, like you watch the numbers match the impact with what she did in that game. Um, so I love that shout, and I agree. I think absolutely somebody who should have been an All SEC nomination before the season is looking very much so like she's going to be on track for that this year. Um, but yeah, obviously we could not get to every single player that we wanted to. I think if you and I
right.
did that, this would have been like a 5-6 hour pod, maybe a little bit longer. Um, if anybody needs proof, we have a Google Doc that shows that that is the case. Um,
It's only 11 pages, and it could be more. It could be
yeah,
more.
only 11. But I mean, to everyone listening, thank you for listening. We had a great time doing this. Um, Mike, is there anything you want to plug before we get out of here?
Uh, Shay Holly. I'll use my plug for we gotta mention Shay Holly.
Listen, I wanted to, but we were running. I was already seeing like
I
30 minutes
we
in. I was
got
like,
there's more.
wait,
You've already covered.
yeah,
We'll be covering. You will definitely be covering her. That's my plug. Is that Shay Holly is going to be an amazing senior year player at Texas, and this will not be the last time you hear about her when it comes to basketball. Keep playing basketball, Shay. That's my pitch. Do not give up. There is a pro future for you. So
I
that's my
co-signed
that's my
that.
plug is a Shay Holly plug. Yes, one of my favorite Shays. There's a couple other Shays in the game, but you'll see that on Twitter. Yeah, I think the other thing would be just at Michael McGee on Twitter if you want to see me talk to myself about players I enjoy and teams I enjoy. That would be the one plug. But this has been a pleasure to finally be able to chat over video and podcast about players that we've talked quite a bit about, on Twitter DMs. So just so excited for this season.
Likewise, my man. To everyone listening again, thank you for listening. If you haven't already, go subscribe to the pod wherever you listen. Hit subscribe down below on the YouTube channel. Be sure to like and comment. That really helps with us getting seen more. And most importantly, enjoy the rest of your day. We got a lot of great games ahead.